Hello, class. It's Miss Roberts here, and today we're going to talk about conflict in groups, conflict styles, and in addition to conflict management. Let's begin. All right. So here's the chapter we've been waiting for: conflict in small groups. Excuse me. Pardon me. Pardon me. So conflict is inevitable, especially when we're dealing with others, but it doesn't have to be a make or break into the experience of the group. Conflict can be transformative. For example, conflict can lead to ongoing change, but we want to make sure that we're respectful and using conflict for our benefit instead of the detriment of our group. Definition of conflict: it is an expressed struggle between at least two interdependent parties who perceive incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference from the other party in achieving their goals. Now, notice the words in bold: express struggle. So, per this definition, someone has to know about the struggle. At least two interdependent parties. Now, we can't have our own in- internal conflict, but in this case, it has to be at least two people that engage in a conflict who have incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference with the other party in achieving the goals. So differences between group members can happen for many reasons. It might be differences of perception. There might be differences of opinion of how a task can go, or communication struggles, personality clashes, conflict in knowledge bases, intercultural differences that aren't understood, power and status, and procedural expectations. There's a misconception that conflict should be avoided at all costs. Sometimes being expressing ourselves and figuring out where the conflict is coming from can, excuse me, can help the group move forward, especially if others have the same views but haven't or isn't able to express themselves about it. Sometimes having a difference of opinion can help with improved procedures or improved understanding about a task. So it shouldn't be avoided at all costs. So sometimes it might not be a misunderstanding 100%, but just different goals, just like in the first definition. All conflict can't be resolved, but at least we can respectfully agree to disagree. So here are some of the different types of conflict. Pseudo conflict is when people agree, but because of poor communication, they believe they disagree. Have you ever been in an argument, then as the argument goes along, you're like, you're right too. Wait, we agree? Whoa, we agree. So sometimes pseudo conflict happens to the best of us. To manage pseudo conflict, we can ask others what they mean by the terms and phrases that they use to prevent misunderstandings. Be supportive instead of defensive in verbal and nonverbal communication when understanding needs occur. And be an active listener. Make sure you're listening with the open mind, open heart, and making sure that you are open to their point of view, even if it conflicts with your own. So, when managing pseudo conflict, ask questions, paraphrase content. So, we've heard of paraphrasing maybe in English class or writing assignments when we are taking someone else's words and sources and putting into our own words and citing that source, I might add. But in this case, when we're paraphrasing conflict, we are phrasing the information in our own words in their presence so they can confirm or deny if that's what was meant to be said. Then paraphrase feelings. Sometimes it's not just about the content of the interaction, but the emotions and feelings that are going along with it. So you can say, hey, do you feel angry about this? Do you feel sad about this? Do you feel annoyed about this? And they can confirm or deny their feelings. there's other types of conflict. Simple conflict is when two people's goals are mutually exclusive or incompatible. The problem is clear, each party understands, and then you work on resolving that conflict. Then there's task conflict is when a group member doesn't agree about the idea, concept, or conclusion that the group has reached. This can be tricky because depending on which type of decision making procedure you've done, like say if you came up to a vote, there were probably more people that voted in favor of one course of action, but it leaves the other people who opposed it out, which can cause task conflict. Then we have process conflict, when a group member disagrees with how a task should be accomplished. It's hard to say how to resolve the process conflict, but I think what if that is the case, maybe trying each person can try out their own way and we can reach consensus at least after a little bit of time has passed, which way was more efficient, or bring it up to the vote with the other members. But these can definitely be resolved, especially task and process conflicts, and the people who are leading the charge on these changes that are causing the conflict. Use your persuasion skills to say, hey, this will work, and then demonstrate how the task and the process can work for the benefit of the group. And maybe you can change the opposition's mind. There you go. But if we are in a disagreement, how can we convey disagreement? Well, first, we don't want to be defensive. So we want to clarify our position and our partner's perception of the message. With paraphrasing, active listening, we're able to clearly express our perspectives and try to understand the perspectives of the person with the opposing viewpoint. Keep the discussion focused on the issues, not the personalities. And I know personality clashes are normal, but once you start talking about who someone is, then the dialogue can break down. We don't want that. Use a structured problem solving approach. So, one of the last chapters or last modules that we review are different ways to solve the problems. Make compromises. Maybe there is something you can give, maybe something they can give, a little bit of give and take in regards to the conflict that can help resolve the issue. And make problem a group concern, maybe rather than a conflict between two people. There might be strong personalities that may clash. Maybe people want to vie for leadership positions, as we talked about in the previous chapter. But when two or more people in the group are having an argument or having a beef, the whole group dynamic is thrown off. So make it the group's mission to resolve the conflict and offer assistance. But of course, on a side note, as the instructor and as the main leader of the group that is our class, if there's any conflicts, please let me know so I can help in any way I can possibly can. Then we have ego conflict. People like to think that they don't have egos, but we do. And we want to maintain our respect, maintain our dignity, and also maintain a sense of pride, and sense of self. So all of those needs that we have just as human beings can definitely spill over into group dynamics. But in that case, if there is a clash with egos, that can lead to ego conflict, which group members become defensive and they feel like they're being personally attacked. That's why we don't want personal attacks or personality attacks when we're trying to resolve conflict. Then there's relation conflict or relational conflict is when one or more members do not like, value, or respect the other person. So this is when we get personal. We want to make sure to not get personal, especially in this class, because we're in this class for a relatively short time, whether it be full semester, shorter semester, or the fast track semesters. We don't want to spend this time arguing and putting our egos or personal attacks involved. And of course, think about the group rules that you created before. Many of those group rules are about mutual respect and communication. So if there are any issues, I'll be glad to intervene and to offer support and conflict resolution. But before it gets to that point, make sure that we're communicating and communicate with me as your instructor as well. So let's talk about the different conflict styles. So one of the first conflict styles that we have in general could be accommodation style, which is a lose win approach style of conflict. That's when they're like, okay, well, here is what you want. I'm not going to fight over it. Here you go. So people may accommodate to maintain what others want them to do and to serve their own needs. So for example, they might be like, okay, I'll accommodate your needs. Maybe you can accommodate my needs later on, or they might not want to rock the boat too much. So by giving in, that's what they want to do. Now, sometimes they might not care about the issue so much, so they might accommodate the other person as well. But make sure to not do this all the time because you have the right to assert what you want as well. So some of the advantages of this accommodation conflict style is that it can help develop a supportive climate if we're able to accommodate each other's needs. We're more agreeable, and we admit to mistakes, creating that climate of trust that we talked about in earlier lectures. But you don't want to give in too quickly, especially if it's an idea that you have conviction about and you think is a good idea. And then, although conflict can be uncomfortable, one of the main things that happens during a conflict or during just a sharing of ideas that we can bring ideas and good ideas to the forefront. But if everybody gives in all the time, that doesn't have an opportunity to happen. Then we have avoidance. I don't want to deal with it at all, so nobody wants to deal with the conflict. Pardon me. So why do people avoid conflict? Too much of half a hassle, too difficult, or it makes us uncomfortable. Maybe personally we're not very assertive people, and that's okay. Maybe it's a fear of standing up for their rights or standing up for what they believe in, or there might be conflicts with leadership and the consequences of doing so. And they might not want to hurt anyone's feelings. The advantages of this can be taking a break from addressing a difficult conflict producing issue, and especially if you don't care about the issue that much, stirring the pot might not be worth it. And it gives group time to cool off about the issue. So it might not be avoidance forever. It just might be avoidance temporarily until cooler heads prevail. But if the cause of the conflict remains, emotion escalates, it might make the conflict even worse. So avoid avoidance if possible. And because no one addresses the issues, then it gives the impression that the concerns are not being heard or met. Then we have the opposite competition. That's when we advocate for what we want and what we need from our group. So this occurs when people stress winning a conflict that's sometimes maybe at the expense of one or two people, but it is advocating for oneself. One person tries to win, so the other person loses. And if you're trying to control without being sensitive to the needs of others, then that can go too far. So have a healthy sense of advocacy for one's own goals, but don't try to step over your teammates to do so. The disadvantages of competition and conflict, it can result in divisiveness. The messaging blames others because we're trying to win, so we're not trying to take accountability for what we've done wrong because that might cause us to lose. And with this type of conflict style, it can be used to control others, but we don't want to do that. Self advocacy is good, but being controlling is not so good. Then we have the compromise. So negotiated win-win, negotiated lose-lose when we give up something to gain something at the same time. So you don't get everything you want, but you get something. So you do have concern for others than yourself, but not everybody wins. So you might have some concessions that need to be made so the group can move on and continue on with the task. So sometimes getting everything you want is not possible, so this is the next best thing in order to resolve the conflict. Then we have advantages. You come to a quick decision, especially if the time commands it. You get to save face, so face saving techniques. Excuse me. In communication studies, when we talk about our presenting selves, how we present to the world, self respect, and the respect of others, we call that face. So to save face, we're able to say, hey, we got some of what we want. We're not so angry about it, so we're able to keep our cool. And it's also to maintain the power balance in the group with compromises so we don't rock the boat. And create a climate of cooperation that can help serve the group because although not everybody got everything that they wanted, at least everybody got some of what they wanted. And then finally, we have compromise. No, excuse me, sorry. We do have compromise. My apologies. Some group members might quickly try to reach a compromise without hashing out why they disagree. So communication is key, especially trying to avoid avoidance with accommodation. We want to make sure that at least our conflicts are known. They might not it might not make the best decision because we're trying to come up with something quickly without taking the extra steps to get everybody what they want. And the final product might not be as good as everyone had in mind because, again, there were some wins but some losses in this process. But finally, let me move myself here. We have the collaboration style. So with the collaboration style, everybody wins. This with this style, everybody wins, and we have our personal grievances out of discussion. We describe the problems about being judgmental. We have a clear evaluation of other people and what they need, and realizes that each person loses something as well as wins something. But with collaboration style, we try to make sure that everybody gets what they want and are satisfied. We have the solution to issues, and it's collaborative, so everybody is hands on. We have new ideas and we work to develop a true consensus so everybody's on board for a solution. But unfortunately, it does require patience. So if we don't have a lot of time, we lean onto the compromise style a little bit more. And people might use the appearance of collaboration as a pretense to compete. So going back to competition style, where self advocacy is important, but as long as it's not trying to get power for control. We don't want to temporarily say okay just to go back and compete later on. Have a true consensus. So here are some additional skills and principles that we can use with conflict resolution and conflict management. The XYZ formula acknowledges the person's feelings, determine what specific behavior is causing the person's feelings. So we're not talking about them personality wise or who they are, but just what particular behaviors are causing the conflict. Assessing the intensity and importance of the issue. So is it really big? Is it a moderate issue? Is it a small issue? What can we do with this? Inviting the other person to join you in working towards the solution, working together, collaboration, and making a positive relational statement. So making sure that we're staying positive and we're working together and uplifting each other even in conflicts. All right. So this says group members. So I'm going to have to put my dealing with difficult group members. We want to make sure to woosah, calm down, and manage your emotions. Yeah, it's normal to feel angry when someone says something that makes you feel judged or evaluated. lean on group members for support. And of course, as your instructor, I am here to help you as well. Unresolved conflict is a breeding ground for emotional upheaval in groups, and ignoring hurt feelings can make conflict escalate. So we want to make sure to communicate respectfully and calmly. Leaders and team members need to recognize when to be active in addressing emotional volatility. So if things get too heated, leaders, group members are able to intervene and calm everything down. But of course, again, I'm helpful in that as well. Okay. All right. Cool. So here's some more strategies for managing your emotions during high emotional times. Be aware of your anger level. You don't want to get too angry. Step away. These are your fellow students. These are your fellow colleagues. You gotta be around them again. So be aware of your anger levels. Breathe. Use self-talk. Calm down. Wusa. Monitor your nonverbal messages. So make sure you're not just like, oh, what you gonna do? No. Yeah. What's the way? Calm down. And of course, avoid personal attacks. Describe what's upsetting you. So don't just criticize the person, just describe what behaviors are impacting you. Use I messages. So I talk about this more so in my interpersonal communication class, but using I messages is structured like I feel when you behave this way, I think this is the course of action we have. So instead of saying just you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, I describe the feelings and the behavior that are causing these feelings, the behaviors that are causing these feelings. And then minimize the conflict, figure out how important the conflict is to you and how to handle it. Managing conflict, so avoid evaluative statements saying, oh, you're lazy or you don't work hard and you're not a good team player. We don't want to have put downs and evaluative statements based on one conflict. Handle your emotions and have constructive expression of your feelings. Talk to your teammates. As instructor, I'm here to help you out. And use effective influence. So instead of with just straight up criticism, model with the behavior that you want to see and just say, hey, let's encourage others to do well. Okay. So we also want to avoid groupthink. You might have heard this before, but the opposite of just straight up being hostile and not necessarily listening to each other is to have too much cohesion that exists when critical thinking is that encouraged or rewarded, almost like peer pressure. We don't want to feel like anyone's peer pressure into making a certain decision. Members can think that their group can do no wrong, or members are too concerned about justifying their actions, or the actual members apply too much pressure for those who don't deserve who excuse me who do not support the group. So I just say it. So some members apply pressure to those who do not support the group. And we want to make sure to provide space for conflicting opinions. It's okay as long as we're respectful, and those conflicting opinions could move the group forward. But just make sure you're not peer pressuring your group to comply. Members often believe they have reached a true consensus, but we want to make sure that that is actually true. And they might be too concerned about reinforcing the leader's beliefs. So good leaders know when to step back and let opinions go. Excuse me, let opinions be heard and go and be heard, and know when to step back and then know when to intervene. All right, so here's how we reduce groupthink. Encourage critical and independent thinking. Be sensitive to status differences that may affect decision making. Invite someone from outside the group to evaluate the group's decision making process. I can be that person for you guys as well. Assign group members' role as devil's advocate. So, in this exercise, you can say, hey, this is the opposing point of view. And then the group can check and be like, oh, okay, here's what this sounds like, and we can make our decision from here. Ask group members to subdivide to small groups to consider potential problems. So instead of having one large group breaking up into small groups and coming back and brainstorming ideas can be a good idea to reduce groupthink. And using email and technology to permit people to make anonymous contributions. So whether it be small pieces of paper during a meeting or with emails or other technology, being able to anonymously put their opinions can help break through that tendency of groupthink. All right, so consensus reaching agreement through communication. All right, so we talked about this as consensus and everybody agreeing. How can we do this? It can be time consuming, but we're trying to communicate with the members in the group, have really strong discussion and problem solving methods, testing the evidence and ideas. So we might reach a consensus, but if something doesn't work, then we can go back to the drawing board and figure out new solutions. And through this process, we can achieve a better quality decision. All right. All right. So thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening. If it's daylight where you are, have an awesome day. If it's nighttime, have a good night and talk to you soon. All righty. Bye.